The holographic display flickered with a constellation of failed equations, each mathematical model more catastrophic than the last. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood motionless, her reflection ghosting across the translucent screens that documented months of unrelenting scientific pursuit. 17 research teams had already collapsed under the weight of the existential paradox. Brilliant minds from across the galaxy had been reduced to statistical footnotes, some driven to madness, others simply vanishing into the vast academic oblivion that consumed those who dared to challenge the fundamental understanding of reality. The room was a testament to controlled chaos. Quantum computation arrays lined the walls, their crystalline processors still smoking from the last series of simulations. Scattered coffee mugs bore rings of dried caffeine, silent witnesses to endless nights of desperate calculation. Crumpled mathematical proofs littered the floor, each a discarded piece of humanity's latest attempt to solve the unsolvable. Elena's fingers traced the holographic data, her touch causing cascades of failed equations to shimmer and dissolve. She knew the stakes better than anyone. This wasn't just another scientific challenge. This was humanity's final examination before the Galactic Coordination Council. The transmission would begin in precisely 17 minutes. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. The door to the research center slid open, revealing Marcus Rodriguez, Elena's brother, and the team's unconventional tactical strategist. Where Elena represented pure theoretical brilliance, Marcus brought a warrior's strategic mind to their scientific endeavor. "They're watching," Marcus said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate with contained tension. "Every major civilization in the known universe is preparing to witness our potential humiliation." Elena didn't respond immediately. Her eyes remained fixed on the holographic display, watching mathematical constructs collapse in real time. The existential paradox was more than a problem. It was a cosmic challenge that had broken civilizations far more advanced than humanity. The challenge was deceptively simple in its complexity. Create a comprehensive mathematical model that could simultaneously describe the fundamental nature of existence across all known dimensional planes. Previous attempts had not just failed, they had driven entire species to collective psychological breakdown. The Zarkonian civilization had lost 72% of their scientific population in their last attempt. The Silicon consensus of Proxima Centauri had simply ceased to exist as a coherent society after their final simulation. Humanity was the latest, and potentially last, species to be invited to attempt the solution. "We're not just representing Earth," Elena finally said, her voice cutting through the room's tense silence. "We're representing every species that's ever looked up at the stars and wondered about their place in the universe." Marcus moved closer, his military-trained eyes scanning the holographic data with a predator's precision. "The aliens are betting we'll fail. They've calculated our odds at 0.00003%. A bitter laugh escaped Elena's lips. Typical. They're so committed to their rigid mathematical models that they can't see beyond their own limitations. The room's ambient lighting shifted, projecting a countdown in massive holographic numerals. 17 minutes became 16, then 15. Each second was a heartbeat of potential cosmic revelation, or spectacular failure. Quantum processors began to hum with increasing intensity. Massive data streams from global research centers converged into their primary system. Somewhere in the complex network of computers and human intuition, something extraordinary was beginning to take shape. "They don't understand us," Marcus said, more to himself than to Elena. "They see mathematics as a fixed system. We see it as a living, breathing language of possibility." Elena's hand moved across the holographic interface, pulling apart complex mathematical structures and reassembling them with an intuition that defied traditional scientific methodology. Where alien researchers saw immutable laws, she saw potential paradigm shifts waiting to be explored. The first global transmission would begin soon. The Galactic Coordination Council would be watching. Thousands of alien civilizations preparing to witness what they believed would be another predictable human failure. They didn't know Elena Rodriguez. They didn't know her team. They were about to find out. The countdown continued. 14 minutes remaining. 14 minutes that would define humanity's place in the cosmic scientific community. 14 minutes that could change everything. The research team assembled in the subterranean laboratory looked less like a group of world-class scientists and more like a collection of cosmic misfits. Dr. Kai Chen sat at the far end of the conference table, his fingers unconsciously shuffling a deck of quantum-encoded playing cards. Each card was a miniature computational device, a habit born from years of blending mathematical probability with the art of gambling. Across from him, Dr. Aisha Okonkwo reviewed holographic neurological maps that seemed to pulse with living energy. Her previous research institutes had labeled her theories too radical, dangerously speculative. But here, in this last-chance endeavor, her unconventional thinking was their greatest asset. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the room, a holographic representation of the existential paradox rotating slowly behind her. The mathematical construct looked like a three-dimensional nightmare, impossible geometries that seemed to shift and breathe with malevolent intelligence. "We're not going to solve this like everyone else has tried," Elena announced, her voice cutting through the nervous tension. Every previous attempt treated this as a static problem. "We're going to treat it like a living system." Marcus Rodriguez leaned against the wall, a tactical overlay from his military augmentations scanning the room. His presence was both protective and analytical, a human weapon system repurposed for scientific warfare. Dr. Kai Chen cleared his throat. "Our first simulations produced some interesting anomalies." With a gesture, he projected a series of quantum probability maps that looked more like abstract art than scientific data. "Traditional computational models collapse when we try to map multidimensional interactions. But look here." He pointed to a series of fractals that seemed to dance between mathematical certainty and pure chaos. Where previous research teams had seen only failure, Kai saw potential. Probability patterns that suggested something fundamental was being missed. "The Zarkonian approach," Aisha interjected, treated dimensional interactions as fixed mathematical relationships. But consciousness isn't fixed. It's adaptive, dynamic. Her fingers moved across her neural interface, pulling apart complex neurological models and reassembling them in ways that defied conventional scientific understanding. A warning klaxon suddenly blared. Red emergency lighting flooded the laboratory. Marcus was instantly in motion, his augmented reflexes scanning for potential threats. "Incoming transmission," the lab's AI announced. "Galactic Coordination Council, Priority 1 Intrusion Protocol." The holographic display fractured, revealing a consortium of alien representatives. Their forms were wildly diverse, crystalline entities that shifted like living mathematics, gaseous beings contained in complex environmental suits, silicon-based intelligences that flickered between physical and digital states. The lead representative, a being composed of interlocking geometric shapes that constantly reconfigured themselves, spoke first. Its voice was a mathematical frequency that the lab's translation systems struggled to interpret. "Your preliminary reports suggest an approach that violates every known scientific protocol," the entity stated. The geometric shapes pulsed with what might have been anger or excitement. "Explain." Elena stepped forward. "We're not trying to solve the existential paradox. We're trying to understand it as a living system of potential." Kai activated his quantum card deck. Each card transformed into a microscopic computational node, creating a living mathematical network that danced around Elena. Probability isn't a fixed state. It's a conversation between potential realities. The alien representatives went silent. This was not the typical human response they expected. Aisha's neural interface began to overload, holographic representations of consciousness models exploding outward like cosmic fireworks. "Consciousness isn't a product of mathematical calculation," she explained. "It's the calculation itself. We're not observing the universe. We're participating in its continuous creation." Marcus watched the interactions, his tactical systems analyzing not just the scientific data, but the psychological warfare being waged in this moment of cosmic revelation. The laboratory's quantum processors began to overheat. Simulation rooms collapsed. Entire computational arrays erupted in cascades of light and impossible mathematical configurations. This was not science as the galaxy understood it. This was something else entirely. The alien representatives began to transmit warnings. Diplomatic channels lit up with alerts. Some saw a potential breakthrough. Others saw an existential threat. Humanity's approach to the existential paradox was nothing like anyone had expected. And they were just getting started. The coffee machine in the research lab had become a sentient being of chaos and creativity. Its latest creation was a brew so potent it could potentially solve quantum entanglement or strip paint from a battleship, or both simultaneously. Dr. Elena Rodriguez took a sip and felt her neural pathways reconfigure. Scattered across the massive circular workspace were artifacts that defied scientific categorization. Marcus had brought in objects from his military research, adaptive materials that responded to thought. Kai's gambling memorabilia included quantum-encoded cards that seemed to exist in multiple probabilistic states. Baisha's neurological research tools looked like they'd been designed by a mad artist who'd studied both brain chemistry and interdimensional geometry. "We're approaching this all wrong," Elena muttered, her fingers tracing holographic equations that twisted and reshaped themselves. The existential paradox wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a living system to be understood. Kai looked up from a complex probability simulation. "In poker, we have a concept called reading the table. It's not about the cards you're dealt, but understanding the invisible systems of human interaction." His fingers danced across a quantum computational array, transforming mathematical models into living, breathing probability landscapes. A massive screen erupted with a visualization that looked more like a living organism than a mathematical model. Probability waves pulsed and breathed, showing potential realities that existed simultaneously. "The alien civilizations," Aisha interjected, "they see mathematics as a fixed language. We see it as a living dialogue." Her neural interface projected complex neurological maps that integrated quantum mechanics with consciousness research. What if the universe isn't a system to be solved, but a conversation to be understood? Marcus stood at the periphery, his tactical augmentations scanning the room. Where other researchers saw abstract theory, he saw tactical potential. Military strategy and scientific discovery were, to him, just different languages of problem-solving. Suddenly, the lab's quantum processors began to overheat. Holographic displays flickered with impossible mathematical constructs. The very walls seemed to breathe with potential realities. "We're creating something they've never seen before," Elena said, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and something closer to religious revelation. Not a solution. A perspective. A warning alert flashed. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Coordination Council. A holographic display materialized, revealing a consortium of alien representatives. Some appeared as living geometric shapes. Others were gaseous entities contained in complex environmental suits. A few existed simultaneously as both digital and physical constructs. The lead representative, a being composed of continuously reconfiguring crystalline structures, spoke first. "Your approach violates every known scientific protocol." Kai shuffled his quantum-encoded cards. Each movement created a cascade of probabilistic potential. In poker, the most dangerous player isn't the one with the best cards. It's the one who can make the table believe anything. Aisha's neural interface projected a visualization of consciousness that defied traditional scientific understanding. It wasn't a static system, but a dynamic, adaptive network that existed in multiple states simultaneously. "Consciousness isn't a product of calculation," she explained. "It's the calculation itself. We're not observing the universe. We're participating in its continuous creation." The alien representatives went silent. This was not the response they expected. Marcus activated a tactical overlay that transformed the scientific data into a strategic landscape. Potential realities became battlefield scenarios. Mathematical equations transformed into tactical opportunities. Belina watched the entire system come alive. The existential paradox was no longer a problem to be solved, but a living, breathing entity to be understood. The laboratory's quantum processors reached a critical state. Simulation rooms collapsed. Computational arrays erupted in cascades of light and impossible mathematical configurations. This was science as no civilization had ever conceived it. The alien representatives began transmitting warnings. Diplomatic channels lit up with a mixture of fear, excitement, and pure incomprehension. Humanity's approach to the existential paradox was nothing like anyone had expected. And they were just beginning to understand the true depth of their potential. The coffee machine hummed in the background, seemingly aware that it had just witnessed the birth of something extraordinary. The first assassination attempt came on a Tuesday, precisely at 1437 Universal Cosmic Time. A quantum-encoded projectile materialized in the research lab's primary computational chamber, a weapon so advanced it could simultaneously exist and not exist until the moment of impact. Marcus Rodriguez detected it 0.03 seconds before it would have vaporized Alina's primary research terminal. His tactical augmentations transformed his entire body into a defensive matrix. Molecular reconfiguration systems intercepted the quantum weapon, breaking it down into its constituent probabilistic components. Where another security system would have simply blocked or destroyed the threat, Marcus's military-grade systems did something unprecedented. He absorbed and analyzed it. "Someone doesn't like our research," he said coolly, displaying a holographic breakdown of the weapon's origin. The weapon's signature pointed to a consortium of scientific organizations from the Proxima Centauri system, species that had the most to lose if humanity's approach to the existential paradox proved successful. Dr. Kai Chen was already tracing the weapon's probabilistic trajectory. "Interesting," he muttered, his fingers dancing across quantum-encoded playing cards that now served as the most advanced tracking system in the known galaxy. "They're not just trying to stop us. They're trying to understand how we might stop them." Alina Rodriguez stood at the center of the chaos, her mind already 3 steps ahead. The assassination attempt wasn't a setback. It was data. Valuable, irreplaceable data about how threatened the galactic scientific community had become. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo's neural interface was already processing the incident. Holographic representations of consciousness models began to integrate the attack into their understanding of systemic threat responses. "This isn't just scientific opposition," she announced. "This is an immune response from a cosmic intellectual ecosystem." The Galactic Coordination Council's emergency transmission arrived moments later. Hundreds of alien representatives materialized as holographic projections, their forms ranging from crystalline geometric entities to gaseous beings constrained by complex environmental interfaces. The lead representative, a being composed of continuously shifting mathematical patterns, spoke first. "Your research has been deemed a potential threat to established scientific understanding." Alina stepped forward, her posture a perfect blend of academic precision and defiant challenge. "Science isn't about maintaining understanding. It's about expanding it." Political machinations began to unfold with terrifying complexity. Economic sanctions were proposed. Research funding from multiple galactic institutions was threatened. Diplomatic channels buzzed with accusations and counter-accusations. But the human team had anticipated this. Marcus's tactical systems had already created multiple contingency plans. Kai had developed probabilistic models that predicted and neutralized potential economic attacks. Aisha's consciousness research provided insights into the psychological warfare being waged. "They're treating scientific discovery like a zero-sum game," Kai observed, spreading his quantum-encoded cards into a complex predictive matrix. "In poker, the moment your opponent becomes predictable is the moment you gain total control." Another attack came, this time digital. Massive computational systems attempted to infiltrate and corrupt their research data. Where traditional scientific networks would have collapsed, the human team's adaptive systems began to not just defend, but learn. Elena watched as their research platform began to evolve in real time. Each attack became additional data. Each threat became another layer of understanding. The quantum processors in the lab began to hum with an almost living intensity. Holographic displays showed mathematical models that no previous civilization had even conceived possible. The existential paradox was transforming from a problem to be solved into a living, breathing system of potential. "They don't understand," Marcus said, his tactical overlay revealing the deeper strategic implications. "We're not just researching a mathematical problem. We're redefining the entire concept of research." Aisha's neural interfaces projected consciousness models that seemed to breathe and pulse with living energy. "Threat is just another form of information," she said. "And information is the fundamental currency of understanding." The galactic scientific community watched in a mixture of horror and fascination. Humanity was doing something unprecedented, turning opposition into opportunity, transforming attacks into advanced research. The coffee machine in the corner continued to brew, seemingly the most stable entity in a room of cosmic potential. Another attack was coming. The human team was ready. More than ready. The moment of breakthrough arrived not with a thunderous revelation, but with a coffee stain. Dr. Elena Rodriguez froze, her half-empty mug tilted precariously over a complex array of quantum-encoded research documents. The brown liquid spread across the holographic interface, creating a pattern that was simultaneously random and impossibly precise. "Wait," she whispered. The entire research team stopped moving. Marcus's tactical augmentation zoomed in. Kai's probability calculations halted mid-computation. Aisha's neural interface seemed to hold its collective breath. The coffee stain wasn't just a random spread of liquid. It was a map. "It's impossible," Kai muttered, his fingers already transforming the stain into a complex probabilistic model. Quantum-encoded playing cards danced around the holographic projection, each card revealing a different potential interpretation of the pattern. The coffee stain represented something no scientific civilization had ever conceived: a living mathematical model that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Where traditional researchers saw chaos, the human team saw a language waiting to be understood. Aisha's consciousness models began to pulse with an almost organic excitement. "We've been approaching this all wrong," she said, her neural interface projecting layers of understanding that defied traditional scientific boundaries. "The existential paradox isn't a problem to be solved. It's a conversation to be understood." Marcus's tactical overlay began to map the coffee stain's pattern against known dimensional models. His military-trained mind saw what others missed. This wasn't just a mathematical construct. It was a strategic landscape of potential realities. The quantum processors in the lab began to hum with an intensity that seemed to blur the lines between computational power and living consciousness. Holographic displays erupted with mathematical models that twisted and breathed with impossible complexity. A warning klaxon sounded. The Galactic Coordination Council was preparing an emergency transmission. The lead representative, a being composed of continuously shifting geometric patterns, materialized first. "Your recent data transmission suggests an approach that violates every known scientific protocol." Elena stepped forward, the coffee-stained document floating between her and the alien representatives. "We're not violating protocols. We're expanding the definition of what a protocol can be." The coffee stain began to move. Not metaphorically. Literally. The liquid rearranged itself, creating mathematical models that seemed to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. It was as if the very concept of scientific observation was being rewritten in real time. Kai's probability calculations went into overdrive. "It's not just a pattern," he announced, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and pure wonder. "It's a living system of potential. Each iteration creates new potential realities." Aisha's consciousness models exploded outward, showing how the coffee stain represented something far more profound than a simple liquid interaction. "Consciousness isn't something that happens," she explained. It's a continuous process of potential creation. Marcus's tactical systems began to map the potential strategic implications. Where others saw a random coffee stain, he saw a multidimensional battlefield of scientific potential. The alien representatives went silent. This was not the research they had expected. This was something else entirely. The quantum processors reached a critical state. Simulation rooms collapsed and reformed. Computational arrays erupted in cascades of light that defied traditional understanding of physical laws. "We're not just observing the universe," Alina said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "We're participating in its continuous creation." The coffee stain continued to move, creating mathematical models that seemed to breathe with living potential. Each moment revealed new layers of understanding that no previous civilization had even conceived possible. The Galactic Coordination Council's transmission began to fragment. Some representatives appeared excited. Others looked terrified. A few seemed to be experiencing multiple emotional states simultaneously. Humanity's approach to the existential paradox was nothing like anyone had expected, and they were just beginning to understand the true depth of their potential. The coffee machine in the corner hummed quietly, seemingly aware that it had just changed the course of cosmic scientific understanding. The first star system began to change at exactly 3:42 Universal Cosmic Time. Sensors across the Epsilon Quadrant registered impossible phenomena. A neutron star near the Carina Nebula started to oscillate in patterns that defied every known law of stellar mechanics. Quantum entanglement networks reported communication breakdowns as fundamental physical constants seemed to become negotiable. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the data streams with a mixture of scientific excitement and something closer to cosmic wonder. "It's responding," she whispered. The coffee stain mathematical model, now a living, breathing computational system, had become more than a research project. It was actively interacting with the fabric of reality itself. Marcus Rodriguez's tactical augmentations went into overdrive. His military-trained mind saw what others missed. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. This was a strategic transformation of cosmic proportions. Entire dimensional landscapes were becoming adaptive systems, responding to the research in ways no civilization had ever conceived possible. "We're not just observing," Marcus announced, his tactical overlay showing multiple potential reality scenarios. "We're negotiating with the fundamental nature of existence." Dr. Kai Chen's quantum-encoded cards began to dance with impossible probability patterns. Where traditional scientific models saw fixed systems, Kai saw a cosmic poker game with rules that were constantly being rewritten. "Each observation is changing the system," he muttered. "We're not just measuring reality. We're in active conversation with it." Dr. Aisha Okonkwo's neural interfaces exploded with consciousness models that seemed to breathe with living energy. Holographic representations showed how the research was transforming from a mathematical model to a living, adaptive system of cosmic potential. The Galactic Coordination Council's emergency transmission arrived with unprecedented urgency. Hundreds of alien representatives materialized, crystalline beings, gaseous entities, silicon-based intelligences that existed simultaneously in multiple states. The lead representative, a being composed of continuously shifting geometric patterns, spoke first. "Your research is causing fundamental disruptions in cosmic stability." Elena stepped forward, the holographic data swirling around her like a living being. "Stability is just another word for stagnation." Diplomatic channels erupted. Some alien civilizations saw the potential for unprecedented scientific breakthrough. Others viewed the human research as an existential threat. Economic sanctions were proposed. Military interventions were considered. But the human team was already 10 steps ahead. Marcus's tactical systems had already developed multiple contingency plans. Kai's probability models predicted and neutralized potential political attacks. Aisha's consciousness research provided insights into the psychological warfare being waged on a cosmic scale. The quantum processors in the research lab began to hum with an intensity that seemed to blur the lines between computational power and living consciousness. Holographic displays showed mathematical models that twisted and breathed with impossible complexity. "We're not just changing scientific understanding," Elena explained, her voice cutting through the cosmic chaos. "We're demonstrating that reality itself is a continuous negotiation." Another star system began to change, then another. Quantum communication networks reported impossible data transfers. Dimensional boundaries became flexible. The coffee stain model had become a living computational system that was actively reshaping cosmic understanding. Kai's probability calculations went into overdrive. "Each observation is creating new potential realities," he announced. "We're not just measuring the universe. We're participating in its continuous creation." Aisha's consciousness models showed how the research was transforming from a mathematical construct to a living, adaptive system of cosmic potential. "Consciousness isn't something that happens to us," she explained. "It's a continuous process of potential creation." Marcus's tactical overlay mapped the strategic implications. Entire dimensional landscapes were becoming adaptive systems, responding to human research in ways no civilization had ever conceived possible. The Galactic Coordination Council's transmission began to fragment. Some representatives appeared excited. Others looked terrified. A few seemed to be experiencing multiple emotional states simultaneously. Humanity's approach to the existential paradox was rewriting the fundamental understanding of cosmic potential, and they were just beginning to understand the true depth of their discovery. The coffee machine in the corner continued to brew, seemingly the most stable entity in a room of cosmic transformation. Another star system began to change. Reality, it seemed, was learning to have a conversation. The Grand Deliberation Chamber of the Galactic Coordination Council resembled a multi-dimensional crystal cathedral suspended in impossible geometric space. 10,000 alien civilizations watched as humanity prepared to present the most revolutionary scientific model in cosmic history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of a holographic stage that seemed to breathe with living potential. Behind her, the coffee stain mathematical model had transformed into a living computational system that pulsed with impossible complexity. The first assassination attempt came 3 milliseconds after the presentation began. A quantum-encoded weapon materialized simultaneously in multiple potential states. Marcus Rodriguez's tactical augmentations intercepted it before it could fully resolve, breaking the weapon down into its constituent probabilistic components. "Interesting opening move," Marcus muttered, his tactical overlay already mapping potential counter-strategies. Dr. Kai Chen began to speak, his hands dancing with quantum-encoded playing cards that transformed raw data into living probability landscapes. "Every scientific paradigm is just a complex negotiation of potential," he explained, each word causing the holographic displays to shift and reconfigure. The alien representatives represented a spectrum of cosmic intelligence that defied traditional understanding. Crystalline beings that existed in multiple dimensional states, gaseous entities constrained by complex environmental interfaces, silicon-based intelligences that flickered between digital and physical existence. The lead representative, a being composed of continuously shifting geometric patterns, interrupted. "Your research violates every known scientific protocol." Elena's response was immediate. "Protocols are just another word for limitations." The coffee stain model began to move. Not metaphorically, literally. The mathematical construct transformed the entire presentation space into a living, breathing computational system. Where traditional scientific presentations showed static data, this was a dynamic conversation with the fundamental nature of reality. Aisha's consciousness models exploded outward, showing how the research transcended traditional scientific boundaries. "We're not just presenting data," she announced. "We're demonstrating that consciousness itself is a continuous process of potential creation." Quantum weapons continued to materialize and dissolve. Political attacks transformed into additional research data. Economic sanctions became computational fuel for their revolutionary model. Marcus's tactical systems mapped the strategic landscape of the presentation. Each potential threat became another layer of understanding. Where others saw opposition, he saw opportunity. The existential paradox, Elena explained, her voice cutting through cosmic interference, is not a problem to be solved. It's a conversation to be understood. The holographic displays began to breathe. Literally, mathematical models twisted and reconfigured themselves. Dimensional boundaries became flexible. The very concept of scientific observation was being rewritten in real time. Kai's probability calculations went into overdrive. Each moment is creating new potential realities, he announced. We're not just measuring the universe. We're participating in its continuous creation. The alien representatives began to fragment. Some appeared excited. Others looked terrified. A few seemed to be experiencing multiple emotional states simultaneously. Another quantum weapon materialized. Marcus dissolved it before it could fully form. "Is that all you've got?" he muttered. The coffee stain model continued to evolve, showing mathematical constructs that no previous civilization had even conceived possible. It was more than a research model. It was a living, adaptive system of cosmic potential. Elena's final demonstration was something no one expected. The entire presentation space transformed. What had been a scientific presentation became a living, breathing representation of cosmic potential. Mathematical models danced. Dimensional boundaries flexed. The very concept of reality seemed to become negotiable. "We're not just presenting research," Elena said, her voice cutting through the cosmic chaos. "We're demonstrating that existence itself is a continuous, adaptive process." The Galactic Coordination Council went silent. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had turned the existential paradox into a conversation. And they were just getting started. The coffee machine in the corner continued to brew, seemingly the most stable entity in a room of cosmic transformation. The aftermath of the presentation rippled across the known universe like a quantum shockwave. Entire scientific paradigms collapsed. Dimensional boundaries became flexible. The very concept of reality transformed from a fixed state to a continuous, adaptive conversation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the research laboratory that had become the epicenter of cosmic revolution. The coffee stain mathematical model, now a living, breathing computational system, continued to evolve, creating potential realities faster than any known scientific system could track. "We've changed everything," Dr. Kai Chen said, his quantum-encoded playing cards dancing with impossible probability patterns. Where traditional scientists saw data, Kai saw a cosmic poker game with rules that were constantly being rewritten. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo's neural interfaces pulsed with consciousness models that seemed to breathe with living energy. Holographic representations showed how their research had transformed from a mathematical construct to a living, adaptive system of cosmic potential. Marcus Rodriguez's tactical augmentations mapped the strategic implications. Entire civilizations were restructuring their understanding of existence. What had been rigid scientific protocols were now fluid conversations of potential. The first practical applications began to emerge. Quantum communication systems became adaptive networks that could predict and respond to potential interactions. Dimensional travel transformed from a theoretical concept to a negotiable possibility. Scientific research became a dynamic living process of continuous creation. Alien civilizations responded in ways no one could have predicted. Some embraced the new understanding with explosive enthusiasm. Entire species began to restructure their fundamental approach to knowledge. Scientific institutions that had existed for millennia were dismantled and rebuilt. Others resisted. Diplomatic channels erupted with challenges. Economic systems that rely on fixed scientific understanding began to collapse. Political structures built on rigid paradigms found themselves fundamentally destabilized. But humanity had done something unprecedented. They had turned the existential paradox into a conversation. "We're not just observing the universe," Elena explained during a subsequent presentation to Earth's scientific community. "We're participating in its continuous creation." The coffee stain model continued to evolve, showing mathematical constructs that defied previous understanding. It was more than a research model. It was a living, adaptive system of cosmic potential. Kai's probability calculations revealed deeper implications. Each moment of observation is creating new potential realities, he announced. The boundaries between scientific observation and active participation had disappeared. Aisha's consciousness research showed how the model integrated human potential into the fundamental fabric of cosmic understanding. Consciousness isn't something that happens to us, she explained. It's a continuous process of potential creation. Marcus mapped the strategic landscape of their discovery. Entire dimensional boundaries had become negotiable. What had been fixed laws of physics were now adaptive systems responding to conscious interaction. The Galactic Coordination Council, once a rigid structure of scientific governance, began to transform. Some alien representatives embraced the new understanding. Others fought against it. A few seemed to exist in multiple states of acceptance and resistance simultaneously. Humanity had done more than solve a scientific problem. They had reimagined the very concept of scientific understanding. Research facilities around the world began to implement the new model. Universities restructured entire departments. Scientific methodologies that had existed for centuries were dismantled and rebuilt. The coffee machine in the corner of the research lab continued to brew, seemingly the most stable entity in a room of cosmic transformation. But even the coffee machine was changing. Quantum sensors showed it was now part of a living, adaptive computational system that responded to potential realities in ways no one could have predicted. Elena Rodriguez looked at her team, Marcus with his tactical precision, Kai with his probabilistic creativity, Aisha with her consciousness insights, and realized they had done something more than solve a scientific problem. They had started a conversation with the universe itself, and the universe was listening, responding, changing. The existential paradox was no longer a problem to be solved. It was a living, breathing process of continuous creation, and humanity was just getting started.